Hello, welcome back to Copilot Learning Hub Live. Today we have a two-part episode and you're gonna love it because it is on a topic all of you keep asking us about, which is, okay, cool, Microsoft, you released a whole lot of Copilots, but how do we actually implement them in our organization? Do you implement them at once? Do you turn them all on? Do you build your own? What's the plan? So instead of me pontificating, we decide to bring an expert. Please welcome Kevin to the show. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Donna. Great to speak to you.
You too.
So my name's Kevin McDonnell. I'm the Copilot strategy lead and modern workplace AI lead at Avanade. So speaking with a lot of clients about exactly what you're saying. You've got all these Copilots, all these options. You want to make AI happen. How do you actually go about doing that? What should you think about? So I get to live these conversations day in, day out at the moment.
Okay, so you work with a ton of customers and you work with customers all over the world, and you've been seeing
Absolutely.
a lot of trends of everyone kind of running into the same issues over and over and over again, right? And I can tell you, we at Microsoft have probably saw the same issue last year, and I am so grateful that you and your team are working on this problem to help our global customers, because we don't want everyone to go through the same growing pains we did. And the more we can have this really nice framework for how you can do this, the better it's going to be for the entire next generation of people who are trying to, use Copilot to do stuff in their business. So I hear you've got, I hear you've got like a strategy framework for how you think about just bringing Copilot into a world. Do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's important you have that strategy, that AI strategy on what you're going to do with things. Because if you don't have one, if you say, hey, Microsoft, I want to buy a load of Copilot for M365 licenses or a whole load of Copilot for services licenses, and that's going to make it happen. And at the same time, everyone's looking at other materials that may be available in other areas, and they're using that in their day-to-day life, and they bring it all together. You're not considering all these different things, and you're going to end up with people duplicating, going out and buying a license that's there and using things in a way that maybe hasn't got the same level of security that the Microsoft tools have. So bringing together that strategy is the key to it. But one of the bits on the framework is to start and look at that. It's not just about saying, I want AI. That's the important thing. What is the underlying need? What is you're actually looking to achieve from it? What are you trying to gain? What are the impressive things within there? And then look at what tools you've got to deliver that. This may be a little controversial to say, but some of it doesn't need AI. I hate to say it. Some of it could be plain automation. It could be just getting your processes in place. So work out what tools you've got and what benefit they're going to bring. Think about what resources you need to actually make that happen. Is that about training up people? Is it about bringing in other partners, bringing in those expertise? And my favorite one that I'm looking at and thinking, oh, I need to do my better accessibility checker. So hopefully everyone can read that, but assessing the value. Don't just buy things for the sake. Don't spend a load of money. Realize a little bit that return on investment. There's a certain amount of that, but value, controversial to say this, is not just about money. It's about how does it make people feel? How does it make people more engaged with the workplace? How does it make them stick with your organization? How does it make them more effective within there? Which will play hopefully into the kind of longer term on that return of investment, but don't just focus on that, those pure numbers. That is absolutely part of it and something to consider in there, but looking at those larger pieces.
So,
and looking at that longer term.
What I really like about what you said right now is there's three things that are so important, and I hope all of you resonate with this, because the first one is AI is not the answer for everything. Generative AI generates. Those are very good use cases. It does also do retrieval and all of these things, but when a use case is not generative, think about how else you can do it before you resort to generative, which is going to be, non-deterministic and a little strange for some people. The second thing you said that I think is so important is really looking at what is it that you're trying to do, right? Before you go spend a whole bunch of money on something that maybe you don't need to spend that much money on, but while keeping in mind that people are already using AI at work. So shadow AI, right, is a whole new topic. People are already using the free versions of things in the world. We're like, people are going to use it. So saying we're not going to do AI in our business is actually not a logical thing, right? You and I both had jobs in the 90s when people are like, oh, we're not going to give our employees access to the internet. Guess what everyone did? Access the internet. It just happened. And to me, this conversation is coming up again. Like, shadow AI is a real thing. And that third thing, like, ROI is measured in decades, not in weeks and months. So you know what I mean, right? Where everyone's like, oh, we didn't see dramatic reduction in blah overnight. We're canceling this. We're like, do you know how long it took for people to figure out how to use Outlook? We were all there, right? You and I were there when Outlook was introduced. And that took a decade for people to learn to put something in the subject line.
Sorry, Donna, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm only 21. I don't know any of these.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just love how you've laid this out. This is great.
No, it's great. And I think if we look at that value, one of the things that we've seen a lot with rolling out Copilot for M365 is people haven't necessarily always done more because they've got that higher productivity. What they've done is produce higher quality work because they've been able to get to a base version quicker and create something better from that. I'm trying not to make a rude word there, but how on earth, let's say, do you actually define that? Because defining quality for many information workers is a very hard thing to do at a strategic level. And that's why we kind of see that sentiment. Do you feel you're creating better quality work plays into that value, which may not, as you say, get immediately reflected on that return on investment. But we've seen time and time again, organizations that do these things properly look better over the longer term and see that investment happen from there.
Absolutely.
But moving on to the next one, I think if you're getting that, if you're not using this responsibly and in a compliant way, then you're going to get hit on the longer term. And, you know, we can look at compliance, making sure you're meeting, whether you're in kind of banking, finance, pharmaceuticals, or even things as simple as GDPR, making sure you're using that personal data correctly. But it's also around, is this a responsible way? Are you doing this in a way that you could happily stand up and talk about this in a public place? Could you go out and say, yeah, we're happy to talk about this? If you're doing things like analyzing lots of CVs coming in and you can't really dictate how you've got to understanding how you choose what's there, are you really comfortable with that? So I think that responsible use is such a critical way. It takes a long time to build up trust. And as certain companies have found out in the last few weeks, it's very quick to lose that trust very quickly. So we want to make sure that you're considering that up front.
Absolutely right.
As well. Finally, penultimate, make sure you're delivering. Don't just talk about these strategies. Don't talk about these big, grand ideas. Think about how you can get some of that value as quick as possible. Not all of it. Make sure you're getting that ongoing view. Look at whether it's smaller groups, specific use cases and scenarios, specific groups of people that can bring that value, get it working for them quickly. And I would say looking at that responsible and compliant use, maybe in certain cases, you're hitting a kind of riskier area with that you can move along with a smaller case that as you scale it up, you've got to consider there. But understand that you're getting that value for those groups and deliver and move on and iterate. And as you're doing that, measure that success. And I'd probably put on that, as I know you love well, celebrate that success too. Make sure you're shouting about that and enjoying it and talking about what works and what didn't work as part of that as well.
I think that what didn't work is key, because that was important. When we tried to do rollouts within specific groups, there's things that obviously worked, like having a set of champs, doing one prompt a week, etc. worked. What didn't work is doing one ginormous training and being like, okay, everyone will figure it out. Pro tip. No, they won't. No, they won't. It was the repetitive training of like a little bit of training every week rather than one ginormous training and expecting people to shift the tool they already use, right? Or the method they already use.
The habits, isn't it?
That's exactly it. And I think it's so important to document these did not work and everyone else learned from it. And that's why I think doing rollouts in an org by org, works way better than trying to roll out to 250,000 people at the same time.
Absolutely, absolutely, getting that out there.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I think, and you can apply this to your general AI strategies. This is not necessarily something to just look at for Copilot.
Right.
I want to mention too many other tools, but apparently there are other AI-related subjects out there that you can bring into the same one. And I think that kind of comes on as to how you decide what those tools you need in your box. And many organizations, I'm talking with an organization at the moment that's got things like ServiceNow, like Salesforce and others that all play into this. How do you decide what nodes to go into there? But I will be honest, I'm very Copilot at Microsoft focused. So why is that tool Copilot? And actually, what are we talking about when we say Copilot? Because I love this conversation. I know we met up in Germany recently at a conference, and you end up chatting to people a bit about Copilot, and you're 2 or 3 minutes in before you realize, oh, you mean Copilot and Power Platform? Oh, you mean GitHub Copilot? Oh, you mean Copilot for Microsoft 365? And you can talk for a little while before you realize there's different things in there. So there are lots of different Copilots, even if a lot of that underlying structure underneath is the same, there are different points to this. So what do we actually mean by a Copilot? To me, it's something that helps increase that efficiency and quality. It's that generative AI capability that fits within there in the flow of what you're trying to do. And it helps you be more innovative and creative because you can try out new things quicker. You can work through those different elements, things that, especially someone who's kind of techie and, as my wife mocks me, not the most creative person naturally. I cannot draw a picture for the life of me. But suddenly with some of the Copilots, I can draw images. I can have an idea, such as some of these, polydesic images here that were generated with Microsoft Designer. I could not draw a thing like this if I tried over months and months and months. But suddenly I can bring that creativity because I can bring those ideas and make them happen. But also I can take in lots of information, whether it's a single document, a collection of all my information, and gather and analyze that. So when we come through, we can look at actually those as a different Copilot within there. So how do you then align these? I remember hearing you speak at the South Coast Summit in the UK.
Yeah.
I think at that time there was 156 or 157 different Copilots. And we sat there and kind of went, whoa, this is a little bit over the top.
Some of it is SKUs, right? Some of it is SKUs. I think in terms of number of Copilot experiences and products, right? Because Microsoft has thousands of products. Some number of them have gotten the Copilot treatment. And I think what's really interesting is when a product gets a Copilot treatment, it's across SKUs. So if there's a desktop version, a web version, an iOS and Android, that is 4 SKUs. That is 4 implementation of Copilot, because that's 4 calls to APIs, baked into the product code that it's written on. So you're really shipping 4 products at once, fixing 4 sets of bugs, 4 sets of behavior, et cetera. And form factor, it depends, right? Web form factors can be different than mobile. So it really is like looking at 4 products to have similar experience, but it won't be the same. So that's been a really fun and cool challenge. But to me, Kevin, this is like search. Do you remember when search showed up and people are like, what is search? Is it in the operating system? Is it in the apps? Are they same? Are they different? And the answer is yes. Yeah. Right? The answer is yes. So we had, when search started showing up in apps, everyone's freaking out like, oh my gosh, what does this search do? What does that search do? Copilot, I feel like a similar treatment. Search, spell check, all of these things that have shown up in products over the last X many years, it's a feature. And now Copilot is a feature to help you be more innovative, more productive, more all these things. And I love how you framed it here in saying like, yes, it is all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think I work with a lot of techies, and I'll be honest, I hang out with a lot of techies as well. So our kind of first thought is like, which product is this? Which license is this? How is this Copilot going to fit into this technology? Yeah. But what we should be thinking about is those, and similar to what you're saying there with search, is what are the experiences that people come through? And I think it fits in with that of what are the different endpoints that you see. I pulled this slide together, which is going to animate in a minute. Don't get too kind of confused about what's showing there. But starting to think about what it means to people. And if we think about those copilots, we've got ones that are available for everyone. That Copilot in Bing, that Copilot in Edge, Copilot for Microsoft 365, for Windows. That's kind of the same for everyone. It covers a lot of different functionality. It's there. It brings that generative AI forward to you. But then you've got the more specific ones that start to look at the role. So whether you're people in sales, in service, whether you're developers who are using the GitHub Copilot and the different elements there that kind of fit within those Copilot for finance, helping those finance people come through in there. And that services that particular role. And then we start to dig into those more ones by scenario. And probably you're thinking here about more custom Copilots. And this is where organizations is almost the tip of that triangle that they can build up to say, I want to build something that hits this particular element. I want to solve this particular need that's very specific. And that's where organizations have that capability that we'll come on to a bit there. But you can also slice it a different way by you've got that customer experience. And that can be not necessarily just customers using Copilots, but how you support them. So some of the elements in Dynamics, such as the kind of marketing elements of that, your service elements, how do you make the experience of customers better? But then you've got how do you make the employee experience better? So you've got the those things I talked about, getting that quality out from things. It's easier to get quality. It's easier to get that innovative, creative experience from there. And then again, you've got those specialist items. So if we look at things like Copilot for security, you've got a smaller number of people who are going to be in there making the value of that. Some of the more in-depth items within Copilot for Copilot in Fabric, where you really want to dig into that data and making the use of that. And actually, if you layer that into that Copilot ecosystem, you can start to see those ones that are available off the shelf of Copilot for Microsoft 365, those ones that are in the licenses you often have already, those more specialist tools, as well as those scenarios where you can start to bring in those Azure OpenAI powered with things like Azure AI Studio and Copilot Studio. So you've got a way to get started with all these on there.
I like how you've broken this up into, you've sliced and diced it by here are, what is the word? Not job roles per se, but persona, right? Is it an everyone? Is it a specialized job? Or is it like, a build your own thing? Or is it for customers, for employees, for something very specific? And some are for everyone, right? Like you're saying, Bing and Windows can be used by everyone for everything. You would use it differently than me, different than our friends in production studio, different than our teacher friends. But there's one, like the Copilot for Service, for example. There is a set of people who will use that, and they will be power users. Then there'll be amateur users like me, and I'll say, oh, that's interesting. I bet I could use it for this thing. But more likely, it's solving a very specific, long-running, decades-old problem for a set of people who've had this issue for a long, long time. And I like how you've laid this out. So not every Copilot is for you. There's going to be some that are for you, most not for you.
And what I love with these is things like the Copilot for Service is Microsoft's got that experience that it's bringing towards this to not just say, here's an LLM, here's a load of techie stuff, that's going to make it better. Actually, they tailored it to work well in those experiences. They've embedded, whether it's Dynamics or the other tools in there to make that happen. They've enabled that acceleration. And that beautifully ties on to my next slide around aligning those tools together. So if we look at all those different Copilots that are there from Microsoft, you can enable those. You can go, great, thanks, Microsoft. Take my money. I'm going to do adoption. I'm going to help people understand it. I'm going to help build the habits, that change that is needed from there. But I don't need to build something myself. I can make that happen and get that real value from it as well. But what I really love with Microsoft is, in many cases, they understand that that's not everything. Unfortunately, there are some places out there that don't just use Microsoft technology. There's other things. And I think that's so, so important. So they bring that capability to extend to kind of, whether it's with low code or pro code, to integrate other systems, to kind of scale out Copilot, to connect to those different areas of knowledge, those different services, to take action, whether it's those microtransactions, those larger scale things that you can connect to. But also, you can scale in with this. So the example I hear a lot is, I've got my policies. Now I'm working for a consulting firm. We help a lot of people with policies. And if I go searching for a certain policy, it has been known occasionally that where I've worked on other projects, those are the most recent documents, those come up to me. So I want to know that when I ask Copilot a question about policies, it scales it towards those because it knows more likely I meet one of our policies on there. So you can direct to specific things. Those of us who come from a SharePoint world, it's that best bets from the good old SharePoint place. How can you tailor people towards this? So a lot of people think about extending about just bringing in other systems and connecting there. It's also getting about more specific results based on what people want as well. Right. I think that's really important as well to that.
Prioritize these, right? Rather than random information, prioritize this information from my data source over here that we've curated for some X number of years. So yeah, I like that.
Absolutely. We then move on to the automates. And I love this one because I originally put this slide together and I was kind of thinking things like Power Automate and bringing generative AI into that, maybe summarizing and making it easier to get those business processes happening. But with this world that's happening now, agentification comes into this. How can we build these automated Gen AI agents that fulfill specific roles and can carry on doing that in the background to make things more efficient as well? So I think if I was going to talk about an exciting one, keep an eye on that. That's growing and growing and growing. Will be more coming from that as well.
And automation is like the cornerstone of agentification of anything, right? Whether it's Copilot, build your own, etc. Being able to automate things well and knowing how to automate and when to automate and being like, be it trigger based or like an automatic, it's key. So people who are wondering how to prepare for an agentic future, get really good at automation. I cannot say enough. I'm so glad you said it too.
And then I think there's also, as I talked about, there's that custom Copilot. So I love Copilot from Microsoft 365. It's a base of things. You can extend it. But there are cases where you want to build something specific, whether you're going to it for a very specific reason. Maybe you've got customers within there and you want to enable that Copilot for them. You may want to isolate this within one of your existing systems, that it doesn't make sense to kind of bring that Copilot for M365 interface. You want it there in the flow of work. And that's where some of those custom Copilots fit within there. You've got those custom engines. You might drill into that and train your own LLM that you want to bring into that system and say, no, this is specifically for that area. For me, I still hope a lot of that sits within Teams and sits within that flow of work. So it's natural and easy to find within there. But there's so many cases where you don't just want to extend. You want to be very focused. That's just what you need. And that's where a lot of the custom parts of that come into.
So one custom Copilot you like is for our accessibility team. We get a lot of questions from for the disability answer desk, right? People with disabilities calling in and saying, hey, what colorblind tools do you have, et cetera? Tools for colorblind people. And answering those calls or getting someone on the phone takes quite a long time, especially if it's like, hey, here's the list of tools. So the accessibility team actually built I call it a dad bot, which I thought you'd appreciate, but it's the disability answer desk bot called Ask Accessibility, which just lives on the site. All it does is pull from the accessibility websites at Microsoft. That's it. It doesn't pull from random information on the internet. It doesn't pull from like any sort of strange third-party database. It's here's the data sources, give answers about this using basic search API. And I think that kind of super targeted thing is exactly what Custom Copilot is for. Like, we're not trying to do M365. Absolutely. We're not trying to extend to Azure Copilot. We just want answers from this data source in this UX. That's it. So yeah, it's fun seeing examples like that.
I think other ones we're looking at have been interesting is that frontline worker. Frontline workers are not going to go in for Copilot for Microsoft 365. There isn't the value to deliver there, but they've got specific needs. I imagine you can have a custom Copilot on your phone, click and tap and talk to it and say, I want to book leave between this time, or I want to swap shifts with it between this time, or I want to find out what the policy is for, I've got a piece of something stuck in my eye. Having that's very tailored to their own specific personas brings so much more value to that as well. And that can link in. What I love about the extension and the customization is they don't have to be fully exclusive. You could bring that same logic towards there.
Right.
So if I have a Copilot for M365, I can surface some of that key policy information and tasks within there. If I've got a custom Copilot that I'm going in as a frontline worker, that could be the same source of knowledge. It could be those same microtransactions that you want to take place that can bring that together. And you're bringing together these different areas of the organization a lot more effectively as well.
That's exactly it. And one of the things I've heard you tell people when it's when do you extend versus when do you custom is if you are already using that app and it has a Copilot, use it. You don't need to build something special to do the same thing. Just use the one in the app. But if the app does not have one, say it's some custom built app, then you can jam in a Copilot, right? Custom build one for it. And I know Power Apps has that capability. Like you can build your own Copilot into a Power App you built yourself, which is really cool. Okay, Kevin. So I want you back on the show. And I want us to dig into extensibility, okay? Extending Copilot, because that one is a fascinating space because there's, I feel 5 different ways, probably more coming, ways to do it. And I'd love to get your take on that. But right now, we're going to thank Kevin for joining us today to give us his overall workflow of building a Copilot and AI strategy. And we will see you all next time on Copilot Learning Hub. We're in the middle of a 2-parter episode on building your AI and Copilot strategy. And we're bringing back our friend Kevin, who is the expert on this topic. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Donna. Thanks very much for having me back again.
Of course. Okay, please tell everyone what you do.
So, hello, I'm Kevin McDonnell. I'm the Copilot Strategy and Modern Workplace AI lead at Avanade. We're a very large global Microsoft partner within there. So I spend my day-to-day life talking about this Copilot strategy, talking about all the different Copilot endpoints, what they mean, what you should be doing and planning for it. And because I love it so much, I don't just talk about it for a day job. I also talk about it with my colleague, fellow MVP, regional director Zoe Wilson. We have a podcast where we go out. It's called the Copilot Connection. You may recognize some of it mentioned in some of these slides here. We go out roughly every 2 weeks, depending how busy we're getting with things on there, and bring in all the experts from Microsoft, such as Donna, but also from across the community, bring in those real stories, the latest updates and what's happening. So we try and bring across everything around this very broad Copilot story that's happening.
I love that. I love that you don't just do this for a day job. You're like, I need a side hustle that's also Copilot related. That I just laugh at this. This is great. So Kevin, one of the things that I find very interesting about you is that you're a strategy lead right now, but in the past you've been a developer, like hands-on dev work. As you know, this is a thing that you and I bond over often, where so much of hands-on dev work happens later once you figure out your strategy to figure out what you're hands-on deving in the first place. Because you and I will immediately be like, IDE, let's do stuff. But people are like, what are you doing? Stop.
Yeah.
But a big part of co-piloting is dev work, specifically the extensibility program. Like, how do you extend a Copilot on your own data, which is honestly a full-on software engineering activity. So I'd love to dig into this because I know you've got a lot of thoughts and a lot of ideas around how people can actually extend Copilots in a meaningful and useful way to achieve some of the things they're trying to achieve.
Well, what I love about extensibility is, it's a software engineering, but we have this beautiful world that you know very well of Power Platform, those power users who've got fantastic ideas. They live in many cases exactly in the areas of business. It's what's brought me to SharePoint, Microsoft 365, is that we don't have people that have to go out there and speak to developers, come up with these requirements and make things happen. We have this beautiful world of makers that can make things happen. And that same story also happens for extensibility. Yep, and we'll talk about this in a minute. There needs to be governance. You need to make sure it's done the right way, but you can enable many people to do this. Plus, those who've built things, who certainly worked within that developer space, who've created things like in the Teams toolkit, who've extended their own custom Copilots, they can have this same story that brings there as well. So we bring this low code and pro code story back to Copilot as well. And that brings it to these Copilot extensions. Now, I'm going to be honest, I have entirely nicked this slide from a lovely gentleman at Microsoft called Jeremy Fake, who gave this session at Build this year. But I love this one because it tells the story of what the different areas you can do. And we've had for a while now these two different ways of connectors and plugins that have been about connectors is about bringing data in an indexed way. So it's that large volumes of data, often unstructured within there. We'll talk about it a little bit more in the next slide. And this is a bit like your search index. So it brings that way in there and you can ask questions of that. But you've also got plugins within there. Now, these plugins are kind of that live story that you can connect to a specific system. And you can take action to things as well. You can make things happen within there. And these have kind of been bubbling around a little bit within that Copilot extensibility story, whether it's in Copilot Studio, whether it's things like Teams message extensions on there to take those activities and do that. I built a lovely Copilot extension that could go in and talk to booking leave and things like that. So I want to book leave between these dates. I didn't have to fill out a little form. I could just do it in natural language and it would kind of understand enough to say, right, I need this start date. I need this end date. Let's work out where it gets through. What I love from the session at Build is we've got this new world coming, not quite there yet. I know there's some private previews going out there of declarative Copilots. And these bring together that power of the connectors, that power of the plugins into a more consistent story. And to me, I love this because this brings that personality. This brings, I've got a Copilot for a specific reason. It could be an HR Copilot that will allow you to look at policies. It will allow you to view your leave balance, book leave, raise concerns with people, even connect to an agent from that point. But you can give it a certain personality. With HR, you want to be friendly. You want to be engaging with people. But then you could have a legal Copilot that's a lot more stern and a lot more focused, or a security Copilot that you must do this, you must do that, and you can bring that personality. I've loved this world of kind of custom dev and using prompts where you can get quite creative with how you build this personality. Before, it was quite tricky to do that within a bot. Now it's kind of a few lines of a prompt that you can pull together within this. And all of these there with that same Copilot user experience. So people see that common experience. And we're starting to see now Microsoft bringing that custom engine. So where you have built those custom Copilots, soon you'll be able to integrate those into the same UX that flows through there as well.
I love this because this answers the question, right? Where people are like, how do you extend a Copilot? And the answer is, it depends. What you're trying to do, what is your data source? And it might be more than one. Right? It might be more than one, depending on what you're trying to do. So I love how you've laid this framework out and that you found this visualization to resonate with you. And Jeremy's going to love hearing this. Thank you, Jeremy. That you found it to resonate enough with you that it's something that you use to go talk to your customers about, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think within this, this doesn't talk about Copilot Studio. This doesn't talk about Azure AI Studio. It doesn't talk about low code or pro code. Because actually the story's the same in this. Whether you're going with low code, you've got a connector, you've got a plugin, you can build those in those different experiences on there. Where do you start to look at that decision point on there? I think it's about what you have that familiarity. If you've got a fantastic group of C# devs, TypeScript, JavaScript devs who've been building Teams bots and extensions for a long time, great, go ahead and make use of those. If you've got a fantastic partner you're working with that can do that, fantastic, carry on using that. If you haven't, you've got that power of Copilot Studio that can do a large part of that as well, that can fill that story. I should have brought this slide. I've just thought about this one that I should have aligned with this one. A lot of people say to me, everyone keeps telling me I need to use Copilot Studio for everything, but I kind of don't feel that this is the right thing from there. So how do I decide what to use when? And the honest answer is, it depends, but it is also, it's not a clear, when you do this, you do that. When you do this, you do that. So I have, because I do speak with techies and they love a good pizza analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it like pizza. To me, Copilot Studio is a takeaway pizza. You can call up, you can choose from a few set options. You can probably customize it a bit, maybe add a bit more pepperoni. If I'm going to be controversial, if you're a bit strange, you could put some pineapple on there and decide what you want on it. Yeah, I'm going there.
Mm-hmm.
But you can customize that. That's to your own taste, each to their own within that. And you can get it pretty quickly. You pay a bit more money to get that fast, that ease and experience. But you'll get what you get within that. And that's it. If you wanted something quick and easy, you could go to the supermarket or your local shop, buy a ready-made pizza there, bung that in the oven. Probably a bit cheaper. Again, you can't really customize that quite so much. It's probably slightly cheaper ingredients in many cases on there. It's not quite so nice. But you could also buy the most amazing pizza oven. You could get one of those lovely infrared thermometers. You could bring the best flour, the best ingredients, and get exactly what you want. Yes, Zoe Wilson, I'm looking at you for this one. You can get the most high-end piece you want in there. And to me, you've got that takeaway pizza is Copilot Studio. You've got Azure AI Studio. You've got all those Azure capabilities where you can choose where you want those different things and build in those different bits you want. You've got that exact control on there. Could I say exactly when you switch between the two? No, it's a very nuanced thing. And I think we'll see the experience as people get more and more experience with the different ways on that to really work it out. But at a high level, it's thinking about those different elements from there as well.
I like that a lot. I love the takeaway pizza example. One of the things that I've heard is Copilot Studio is very good if you're going to build a conversational experience of some sort, right? Like you've got a set of assets that you want to drop a conversational thing into. And that can be like, a chatbot or a Q&A or helper agent or assistant or something like this that you've got on the side of Teams or your website or whatever it is. And Azure AI Studio is great when you're going to build an app from scratch. Right? You're not building a conversational experience. You're maybe building a retail shopping experience. And you actually want generative AI to generate you image descriptions or copy or something like that. Like you're going to build like a new Shopify app. And that you wouldn't use Copilot Studio for because it's not really conversational. It's more, it's generative AI. It's generating you a bunch of things for the new version of Shopify or the new version of Maps or something like this. So that's where I've heard of it. The other thing is exactly what you said, where you've got to use the tools with the team you've got, right? The best tool is the one that works. It's like sunblock, the one you use, the one you know how to use. And if you do not have pro-code developers on your team going out and buying a lot of Azure AI things, right? Whether it's Azure AI, Logic Apps, this and that, you're going to be in a world of learning before you even get to solving the problem. Because if you've got a bunch of high code devs who know how to use Azure, who know how to use, cognitive services, have experience with like computer vision, cool, go build your own thing. But if you don't have that talent, going and finding the talent now is going to be very hard. As you and I know from just the low code space, that was why low code is a thing, because we don't have enough pro code engineers in the world to go out and build you your custom apps. But again, it all depends on what you're trying to do. But that's why I'm so glad partners like you exist, because you can guide people there. And if they truly do need a high code experience, you all have that capacity to go out and find the right people to build that thing for them.
Exactly, to help and supplant that. So don't feel that if you haven't got those people, you can't do it. Right. There's people out there who will work very much in partnership with you to deliver that as well.
Awesome.
I've deviated slightly as I tend to do. I wanted to, I'm going to flick this slide up and not animate it because we kind of covered some of these things as well. But I do get a lot of questions around when plugins and when connectors, because you could have your data as a connector within there. How do I choose when it's a plugin within that? And let's say you have your knowledge store and you can't decide, should I call that through an API or should I build a connector within there? I think this nicely summarizes it. And again, I've taken a lot from Jeremy's session, BRK 150 of builds, which is great to look at this. But if you have that very unstructured data, great, put that into your graph connectors, into your data connectors, into Fabric, so you can have that large scale data that can come through from there that can be summarized. If you've got unpredictable prompts and you really want that semantic view, bring it into that matching on there as well. And if you're things that aren't updating frequently, that works perfectly, because there's a certain amount of indexing. It will take a little bit of time. If you want that real-time data, if you've got your ERP system coming through, your ticketing system, you don't want to wait 15 minutes to find out what's happening with your updated ticket on there. You want to get it straight away. And that's where the plugins start to work. And also those right actions. If you're taking action on something, that's where those plugins really help from that as well.
I love this. This is a great layout and a very good way to explain, because this feels more straightforward. It's like, you know if your data is structured or unstructured. You know if it's very relational or not relational. You know if you need it real time, or is it like, Twitter plugin or whatever, compared to the kind of graph things we're used to, like Exchange, SharePoint, et cetera, et cetera. So this is good. This is awesome.
And then what I love about this declarative Copilot is you bring these things together nicely. And I've got kind of an example which I always like to tell people with this. If you think of, I don't necessarily want to call it the old world, because in many cases it's the current world for people, but I want to get a replacement headset. Mine's broken, my cat sat on it and snapped something within there, so I need to go and get a replacement from there. So in the current one, you probably go into SharePoint, have a look through your intranet, find out where it is, searching through, trying to find the right one, find out who to speak to, eventually get through to them, send them a message within Teams, and they say, oh, hang on, let me go back and check that ERP system. Oh, there's none there. Here, let me pass you on to this to go in order. Then you go on to this other system, which could be ServiceNow or Dynamics or something. You've got to go and find the right area within that. You've suddenly forgotten what the name of the headset you need, because that's no longer in stock. So you kind of get this back and forth. You have to ask a lot of people where these systems are. It's not joined up and connected. In this beautiful Copilot world, and this is a genuine response from our Copilot for M365, I can ask ServiceNow, how do I get a replacement headset? And that's where we have that knowledge. I can then in the next one say, are there any replacement Jabra headsets in stock? And it can check that ERP dynamically and say that there are none currently in stock. For any system, please make a request. And my next conversation can be, please, can you order a replacement? And it will log that ticket into the system. There will be a human there to kind of deal with that and send it through. It's all linked together, all in 3 conversations right there, all in that flow within Copilot. So you've got that single experience that comes through that you can deliver to people, and you can link these things together. I haven't said, please, can you, when I said, please, can you order a replacement? I didn't say for what, because I've already asked that question previously. It's got that history that brings things to do. I'm not having to repeat things, and it knows who I am. So it knows where that's got to be delivered to. It knows how to notify me on that. It's all in that seamless response, all in one go, which is great.
I love it. This is great. This is great.
So in terms, I think the next steps of this, think about how you create these things. And we kind of touched on this a little bit. I'm loving this world where we're kind of seeing that end user creation. We've heard announced the SharePoint Copilots, when an end user can go and say, I've got my knowledge, I've got my site here, I want to be able to search that, and I want to allow other people to do. We're going to see that explosion of end users doing that with the right governance. Don't get me wrong, we're still going to bring those things in there. We've then got the more technically minded who can use things like Copilot Studio, who are those power users who can gain that through. And they've got that notion of testing. They know around governance and building environments. They've got that next level within there. And then you've got your specialists. We talked about the AI Studio, things like semantic kernel, Teams AI. They could be Python developers, C#, TypeScript. They could be those pure machine learning data scientists that come through from there. There's a route for all these different people to be able to create solutions and offer those to end users as the different ways as well.
I love it. It's very true, though. I truly believe everyone has a role to play in the AI verse, right? We talk about this quite often. And it's not always just consuming it. It is creating the thing you need to do your job. And there's tools for everyone, all depending on what you're trying to do and what you're comfortable with. And that doesn't mean what you're comfortable with today is all you're ever going to do, because these tools are going to get easier to use. We're in year 2 of the era of AI and generative AI and copilots, right? Just in year 2. And the tools are already okay. They're only going to get better and easier to use and more available and usable for people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the challenge of that, and again, I remember that South Coast Summit session you did, and you were talking to a lot of Power Platform people and said, you are perfectly positioned because you've been through this story.
Yes.
You've been through that end user, power user specialist. So it kind of brings forward to a lot of the learnings that we've had from that we can bring forward. And I think your strategy should consider many of the same things that have happened there, of that low code to pro code within there. So thinking about your strategy, you should consider the different people, these personas and groups within there and what they bring to it. So your kind of stakeholders, whoever that is, whichever area you're looking at, who will own that, who will be there to help you define what value you're bringing on there. And one of my favorite phrases that really seems to have kind of built up over the last 6 months is that digital core. So whether that's your kind of SharePoint environments, your teams, your knowledge that's there within that, or whether it's your data, that could be Dataverse, could be your data lakes, your databases within there, making sure that you understand that it's got the suitable permissions, that people know where to get the information from, you've got golden sources, you're managing that. I'll be honest, many of us techies have been talking about sorting these things out for a long, long time. With this world of AI, that becomes so much more important because it's so much easier to surface the wrong thing. Now we've got to make sure it's easier to surface the right thing by building that core and making it central there. And that fits also with that life cycle of making sure you're managing that content through. And again, it comes back to that measuring success. They're your stakeholders that will help you to find that.
And you know what's interesting about this? Is like, okay, for a long time, businesses should have been doing this all along. I know this, we all know this. Microsoft should have been, Avanade should have been. But AI makes it so you have to before you can AI.
Yeah.
Right? You have to. There's no way you can deploy AI across your org with chaos. The shadow AI problem, right, we talk about all the time, because now you have to get your house in order before you can deploy this. And this is a very beautiful framework because you know it works. You have tried and tested this on lots and lots and lots of customers, in-house at Avanade, probably in-house at Microsoft. And there is a formula for how it can be done. It's not this big mystery of how do we deploy AI? Oh no, there's a way to do it. Everyone should follow the basic template and then modify as needed. You know, some places are more compliancy, some are more creative. But like, take this basic template that Kevin is showing, go implement, right? It's a beautiful starting point.
Absolutely. And you start to bring these end users into it. And you could argue these top two of things about stakeholders and end users. We talked in the last show about that kind of enable capability. All these, think about that experiences, how you enable people to use these tools, that community. They fit with whether you're just using an existing Copilot from Microsoft, but it's the same when you extend it. How do you let people know, I showed that ServiceNow example. How do you let people know that they can search that information? How do you think about making that part of what the capabilities are as well? So that same adoption and change comes through in that, how you build those communities. But with extensibility, you've also got to enable those teams who are creating things, whether they're makers and power users, whether it's those specialists that come through. Give them the ability to understand those capabilities, the tools, the environment, the accelerators to make that happen. And then the governance, responsible use that we spoke at the beginning of that first episode, all play into those administrators. And they could be technical administrators, they can be process administrators, to make sure that continues happening as well.
Absolutely right. I love it.
And how does this all fit together? I'm going to shout out to someone in a minute who's done some fantastic work on this in terms of thinking about your center of excellence and center for enablement, your center of an excellence that really talks about what it is that's good, how you bring those things together, your enablement of how you get to that point. And the fabulous Simon Owen has got a great blog post around this. I assume we can put some links in notes because I'll have to dig that out and send that through to you. If we look at that center of excellence, it's that governance, that security and platform operations, a lot of those administrative things, but also that reporting telemetry on there that can understand the success. For enablement, it's that adoption and change, exciting people, building that community, making them want to do it and understand the value of doing it, how to do it as well, and celebrating that success. And he's got a lovely way he's talked through that. I'm very much looking forward to talking about this a bit more with the Copilot at the Scottish Summit in a few months. So we're doing a joint session to dig into this deeper.
This is great. Simon,
keep an eye out for that.
Shout out to the Simon O in the back. I love this. This is a great, I hadn't seen this. This is awesome.
Really nice. And I kind of love that he keeps it as a nice sketch view as well. None of this Ponzi, PowerPoints. It's real, this stuff. I love it. That's where it comes through as well.
Fabulous.
So I'm going to skip on a little bit because I think we talked about that and we'll dig into that a little bit more. I think, again, talking a little bit about that ensuring value, we spoke about a lot within that first one. So looking at that return on investment, how people are using it, making sure the right people are using it as well, because that's where you get the value. You can get a lot more value around getting your leaders within there making use of this than you can from many people on the ground on there. So making sure you understand those different levels on there, thinking about the sentiment that people have with it. I love Microsoft's WorkLab site, Microsoft.com/WorkLab, where they kind of ask that question to people: what would you give up to keep your Copilot for Microsoft 365? And I think it was like a lunch a week, a free lunch a week. So what is it that people would live without to lose these things? That really puts them on the spot to think about that as well, and thinking about that enablement to get the true value from things as well.
I love it. It's very true though, because people find different ROI in things, but it really is a fabulous question. What would you be willing to give up to keep a Copilot? For me, GitHub Copilot is one that I will refuse to code without now. People are like, what if your workplace took it away? I'm like, I will pay for it myself. I have zero issue with that. Thank you for your info. Same with Word Copilot though now. I've become like that. And Teams Copilot. Now I'm a bit of a Teams Copilot diva. Without it, I'm like, where's the recap? People are like, we don't have that in this other product. I'm like, no. No.
It's one of the nice things about working with, well, there's many nice things about working with clients, but often I'm working in their environments and I won't have those same Copilot licenses. And you kind of go and do something like, okay, I'm going to have to think myself here. Okay, let me double those estimates and things on that. So it is exactly those elements that you can put a finger on within that. And I think this comes to kind of wrapping up. What is it about Copilot within this world? Why are we talking about this extensibilities in different areas? It's because it's those experiences that come through. And I love the fact that Copilot acts as that experience layer. It's that one place to go to. You get that commonality. You know you're going to be able to getting prompts. You know you're going to have a way that sort of suggests prompts to you. You know that you're going to be able to integrate this deeply into the systems you're using. You know that you can bring in your own applications and services and soon your custom Copilots, all to bring forward your digital core to the right people. And you can align this to those different roles that you have that you can fit within there. There are different ways of enabling that and extending and building custom that all comes together with this same view on there. So thinking about your strategy with Copilot at the center just helps people understand that and brings that same capability across all these different worlds as well.
I love this visualization because it does lay out all of the different vertical things that people think about, and then where does Copilot fit in within each one? And Copilot extended to various data sources for each of those roles or functions or whatever we want to call it. Yeah, that's great.
And I would ask Microsoft not to put too many more into that because I haven't got space in this slide. So I know I haven't got manufacturing in there. There's loads. So that may not be a reason for Microsoft to do things, but please, not
everyone
too many
respect Kevin's slide, people.
Although I can get Copilot to update it.
That's true.
Is a good point.
Awesome. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. This has been fascinating. Just thinking through how you talk to customers about this. And I can completely see you start them like, where are you today? And that level of conversation is different depending on where you're at and what they're trying to do. But I like that you've got this playbook for any customer really to start their journey, no matter where they might be on their tech stack or on their data readiness or their AI readiness, et cetera. And I am so happy that you and our friends at Avanade are doing this work, because we, Microsoft, cannot reach billions of people on our own. It only works through people who work at Microsoft partners such as yourself. And we are very, very excited to keep seeing what you all implement, because the stories you bring us are fabulous. Love it.
So I think you gave me a challenge to set some homework for people. So I'm going to give people 3 bits of homework. 1, think about what you want to get out of AI. So, and you could split that down into what you particularly, what you as an organization, what you as a team want to get out of it. Think about that. Think about what tools that you have available to do that, either there already or that you want to bring there. And then think about how you can bring those things together. Because if you've got Copilot, you can bring that together nicely. You can scale to those right things. So write those down and think about it. And then, have those crazy ideas, have those crazy differences. What I love about chatting to people is, we were trying to do this. I can give an example today that someone wanted to take a document. They wanted to take all their contracts and say, what are the prerequisites? We want to be able to process those and understand the prerequisites. Can generative AI help us do that? And I was like, yeah, of course it can. How on earth can it do that? I need to think about this now. So have those inspirational ideas, because it will challenge people like Donna and I to go out and say, yeah, this is great. I hadn't thought about that before. How can we help people do that? And so go out, challenge us.
You know your scenarios better than we do. I should not be telling you what scenarios are for legal or HR or finance. I should not be doing that at all. We should be helping you. How do you do that? Here's a challenge you have, a problem you want to solve. Here's tooling you have in-house. Can you put them together, yes or no? Or do you need some other new thing? So rely on the Kevins and the Donnas to help that second part, but please do the first part of identifying, here's some core scenarios that are extremely annoying and have been annoying for a very long time. And these seem like good candidates to AI. Good homework, Kevin. I like that one.
Absolutely.
I like it so much. All right, everyone. I know we've given you a lot of information, as Kevin and I tend to do, but please do go check out his podcast called Copilot Connection for much more in-depth information like this and so much more on all things Copilot. And we will see you next time on Copilot Learning Hub Live. Hello, and welcome back to Copilot Learning Hub Live. As you might have noticed, we have a co-host today. You.
Hi.
It's you. Yeah, say hi. And the reason we have a co-host is for 2 reasons. First of all, we're starting to do a thing where on Copilot Learning Hub, we are going to showcase some of our Microsoft partners and Microsoft ISVs who are doing cool things with Copilot in the world. And we want them to come on and share their stories themselves rather than me telling their stories. So that's one reason. The second reason is the topic of today's episode is slightly different than our other episodes. Usually, I introduce a guest, we dig deep into tech, and we get into the nuts and bolts of how we prompt this and prompt that. But today's episode is about humans. And I should not be talking to you all about humans. No, I shouldn't. No, I shouldn't. Because I'll be like, why though? So I decided to bring Chris, who specializes in the human aspect of copiloting, who also phoned a friend who's joining us called Vicki, who's in the UK right now. So welcome, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us live at Copilot Learning Hub. Please introduce yourself.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. So my name is Chris Huntingford. I'm the Director of Innovation at a company in the UK called ANS, right? So what we do is we focus on deploying AI to organizations. And one of my favorite things to deploy is Copilot, right? Or one of the many Copilots at least, Microsoft 365 Copilot. And yeah, we've had some interesting experiences with some of the organizations we've worked with. A lot of the time we feel like, hey, we're going to install some tech or deploy some tech, which is really good. But actually, what we discovered in this whole process is there's a big human element to this. And actually, culturally, there's a lot of things that need to change. This is why you need to stick on the tech and I will stick with the humans.
Right.
Okay. And yes, I did phone a friend, a very special human, who has actually deployed Copilot in an organization before, a couple of orgs, and working on it right now with me. And Vicki, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Vicki Holman. I'm an ecosystem architect at ANS. So I've been working with Chris since the beginning of July, so not long at all. Before that, I was working at Hargreaves Lansdown, which was where I was responsible for the rollout of Copilot there on the early access program, and it was a pretty big success. So I'm here to talk a bit about that and the human-y side of things, the adoption and engagement.
I'm so happy both of you are here because you have actual stories of how to do this outside of Microsoft.
Actual stories.
Because honestly, like deploying at Microsoft was hilarious. But we also know we're a ginormous tech company. So I'm so curious about how this went at a company where their core business is not building tech, especially the tech we're rolling out. Because I can't imagine how just sudden it must be like, here's a tech. We must deploy it to everyone. You must use it. Be experts tomorrow. Off you go. I can imagine that's hard. Even for a non-human-y sort like me, I can imagine that this would be kind of a complicated process.
Yeah, it is. And the one thing I just want to say about Vicki is that Vicki is secret geek. So please don't actually think that Vicki's only job is doing adoption and things. Actually, she's very proficient in tools like Purview and that. So yeah, there's a lot of experience to be had here. Really.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Vicki, tell us everything you've learned from actually doing this kind of work. I'm very, very curious. So is our audience.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, I'll just run through some slides. So basically, I think the main thing, we've already touched on this is all about the people. It's a massive people thing, not so much a tech thing, maybe 50% as Chris spoke about earlier. So basically, I think some organizations, they might have great sort of change management processes and adoption teams and all that kind of thing, but a lot don't. And Copilot isn't one of those technologies that you can just throw out there and hope that it sticks. It's not like, say, a CRM tool that you have to do your job. Copilot's something that we want people to use, we think they should use, but it's kind of their choice, really. It's not something that they have to do their job. So also, it's kind of a very personal, individual thing. So the way I use Copilot would probably be very different than the way Chris uses Copilot. And even if we were doing the same jobs, that would be the case. And it's such a huge change in the way of working. I liken it to sort of the dawn of the internet or something like that. It's just such a change to how people do their jobs. So that's why it's a people thing. You can turn on the technology, that's all well and good, but it's the people that you need to make this change a success. So from my experience, there's a few sort of people-sided barriers, and I've got them listed here with my little hurdlers jumping over barriers. So one of them is skill. And, I've just said that it's a change in way of working. And it's one of those things where you have to learn how to do it. You have to learn how to prompt well to get most out of Copilot. That's really important. And you have to learn to kind of encompass Copilot into your daily work. It's a habit that you have to get used to. Another aspect is fear. So we all know that AI has been around for decades, but generative AI is a much more recent thing, and certainly in the last couple of years with the release of ChatGPT and things, it's really come into the forefront of people's consciousness. And with that, there's been stories about this being the end of humanity and it's out to take all your jobs and all that kind of thing. So naturally, people are going to be slightly reticent sometimes about using it. And another barrier is time. So this is a bit of a catch-22 situation, because obviously one of the great things about Copilot, everyone knows is, wow, it's going to save you so much time. But because you have to learn that new skill and make it a habit, it takes a bit of time before, you have to put in a bit of time to get that time back and really see those benefits.
Okay, so
if we don't...
Vicki, what I loved about that framework is that we technologists, right, we fixate on that first one called skill. It's like, hey, implement the thing, teach people to use it, move on. The fear, the overcoming fear, like why aren't people learning it? They're afraid they'll be replaced, et cetera, et cetera. That one I've heard about. The third one I've not thought about, which is people are saying, I just don't have time to learn this thing that's going to save me time. And
that was actually pretty big when I rolled down a Hargreaves Lansdown. It's pretty big,
It's a big deal. In fact, one of the deployments we're doing now the folks we're working with are actually saying, even taking half an hour out of a week to go and relearn something that they can do manually really quickly is extremely difficult.
Wow.
But ultimately, you've got to give some to make some, right? And that's really important. So that's amazing. Thank you, Vicki.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, no worries. So, I mean, if you don't overcome the barriers, I don't think this is really specific to Copilot, but obviously you'll get colleague dissatisfaction, risks to future products where you've got that sort of change, lethargy, apathy, failure to meet success criteria and reduce usage. But that's not specific to Copilot, but I just think the human side is much more important with Copilot. So
can I ask a quick one? On the previous slide, you have success criteria in there. Did you have any specific ones that you wanted to mention around like what success would mean to you?
No. So this was really interesting. In my particular experience rolling it out at Hargreaves Lansdowne, we were accepted onto the early access program, and we were told we did not need success criteria or a purpose. It was going to be purely experimental, which sounded at the time to be incredibly freeing, and we were like so excited. We were like, oh my god, the opportunities are endless. But actually then when you get towards the end of the early access program and you want to validate what you've done, and you don't have success criteria, it's almost impossible. But I was going to touch on that in a later slide, but it's cool. It's an interesting point. So here we go. So the first steps I think that you've got to do before you start thinking about, rolling any licenses out to anyone is to identify a stakeholder and senior leadership. So there's got to be someone who's really behind you and really shouting from the rooftops about how great Copilot is and how this is such a positive thing. Nothing to be scared of. We're not trying to replace your jobs, and Copilot is great. And you want to have, as we just touched on, a purpose and success criteria, because otherwise you're kind of drifting free and you don't really have a direction to go, and it's really hard to prove what you've done at the end of sort of any kind of pilot or anything like that. And then I found what was particularly important for us was community. So this was like business champions, which I know means different things to different people. But in this context, it was people we'd identified across the business who had previously shown great engagement with technology projects, were interested, liked to learn, liked to help other people. And we approached them and said, hey, can you come together and work with us, the IT team, the project team, on the rollout of Copilot. And that was absolutely key. We're a small team, but if you've got little pockets of people within the business who are on board and engaging and pushing this forwards, it's brilliant. And also I think if you're in the business, it's one thing for someone from IT going, oh, do you know what, you need to use this product. If you've got other people in the business saying it makes a bit more of a difference.
I like that you've got those three categories of people. Because there's the stakeholder, right? Some sort of a senior person who's saying, we're doing this. Yeah. This is part of your job now. It's not some random skunkworks project that some people are doing on the side. Because we've all seen that does not work. That does not work, because then you've got shadow AI issues. So I love that you've called out the stakeholder role. And then you've got, the IT implementation people who, that would be all of us. And then you've got like the actual community you need to build in-house. Yeah. So people learn from each other rather than IT trying to push use cases that we do not understand all these use cases. Yeah. But that stakeholder role is more important here than it has been, I feel, in other things. Because before it was kind of assumed, like you're saying, you're going to use the new dev tool, devs. Right? This is not news at 11. Exactly, you should use VS Code to write code, obviously. Yeah. But because this is not as obvious, that stakeholder kind of beating the drum, waving the flag, winds up being more important. And it's so interesting that you've seen that exact same thing in your business that we're seeing across businesses in the US as well.
Yeah. I've also found something interesting, like when you're going through this whole process of generating a community, which I agree with you, by the way. For me, that stakeholder is really key, but then getting people to create a movement. I call it the first follower movement, right? So like you'll be a champion and then you'll have other people following the champion, but that first follower is the most important, because if you get that person to do something and actually use the tools, it'll ripple effect across. And also, in communities, right? Like I know you've experienced this because you and I have spoken about this before, is that people support one another. So it's not just about using the tools. It's like, hey, I figured out a cool prompt. How could I make it better? Did you find that in your previous delivery?
Yeah, definitely. You'd have people sort of posting in the Teams channel going, oh, do you know what, guys? I just tried this today and this happened. And other people going, oh my God, that's amazing. I'm going to try that. Thanks so much. And, people go, oh, do you know what? I took what you tried there and did this. And then this happened. And it was just, it created such a nice buzz about it, such a nice vibe. That, people were just, and it's the first time I think at my previous company that something had been done in that way in terms of a technology rollout. And it made it, people were just really excited about it. It was great.
That's cool.
That's great. I love that.
Cool. So then next on to the actual kind of adoption and rollout. So you need to think about who, obviously. Now, if you wanted to achieve the quickest deployment of licenses, you just sort of throw them out there as like a flat drop. But then you're not really going to get your adoption and engagement right. So you really need to think about who you're going to roll out to first, like, obviously your champions, your project team and all that kind of thing, and roll out in these, I know Chris has called them release rings. And what's great about that is it gives you the chance to go through that adoption and engagement, and it gives you the chance to learn from things that have gone really well and things that haven't gone so well. And that's going to be different for each organisation because everyone's unique and every organisation is unique. So you can roll out and you can learn as you go with these release rings. Then the other things is comms. So again, your stakeholder comes in here, your senior one, he's going to be there at the town halls shouting about how great Copilot is and how it's coming soon and it's going to be brilliant for everyone. You're hopefully going to have it on the intranet. You get out in the business yourself, be attending people's meetings, just promoting it and showing it to be the positive change that it is. And then obviously for those individuals getting licenses, they need training and sort of demos on how to prompt, how to get the best use out of it. Because it is, I remember when I first got a Copilot license and I was just like, all right, well, here's a pre-built prompt, click on that button, see what happens and that kind of thing. But actually, as you start using it and you work out how to prompt properly, you get so much more out of it. We did this also in the form of like drop-ins, and it was like almost Apple Genius bar style. So you'd just be like in a room all day, and then people could just wander in and out as they wanted and have a little one-to-one with someone on the project team and learn a bit more about Copilot. And then scenario-based workshops are really useful too, because it means that you can take a persona from the business and, think, is there something that they do or people in their department do that would really benefit having Copilot? So it could be, is there a department who has to digest a large amount of content and summarize that? Or is there a department who does a lot of minuting and then could use that kind of meeting summary functionality? And then that works well for if you're trying to think about where your Copilot licenses might add more benefit. So that's really useful.
I like that a lot.
That's great.
That scenario-based workshop.
Yeah,
that's cool.
That's actually a really important point because I yell a lot about scenario-driven approach because I think a lot of the time when using tools like Copilot, people focus on the use case so much and they're like, what is the use case? And they try and drive return on investments through a simple use case, and the use case being merging a document or like taking minutes from a Teams meeting. But actually that fits into a much wider scenario. And if you focus on the scenario, like the story, and I'll give you an example on like customer onboarding, okay? You don't just focus on one part of it to determine ROI, you focus on the full process. And actually we're seeing more success there than fixating on the smaller uses of it, right? Did you find that as well, Vicki?
Yeah, definitely. We had a look at, we invited various, let's call them personas, people, humans in from the business to do these workshops and try and understand sort of how their processes and the things they were doing sort of would benefit from Copilot. So yeah, definitely, it wasn't as simple as merge a document like you say, or compare a document or something like that.
I like those drop-in things you said too. where people could
Yeah.
come and drop
yeah.
in and ask you questions.
Yeah,
That's
people
clever.
loved that.
Yeah, that's clever.
Yeah, that's genius.
We had our first one, and we were like, yeah, okay, drop-ins and come. Second one, people were queuing at the door before we opened, all ready to go, all excited.
I like that. We should add that to various playbooks. I like that so much.
Because you're creating excitement. Like you're actually creating because I still think people love the in-person, like, hey, it's like the little micro hackathon type approach.
Yeah.
You know, I love that actually.
I like that. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
All right, sorry, I keep interrupting you because I kind of like this. This is fun.
But no, it's cool. So aside from the adoption, we weren't just like, okay, so we'll do adoption and then off you go, see you later. It was, we had to continuously engage people. Now, at my previous place, we had 75 to 80% utilization, activity the whole time. And I think that was really very much down to our engagement. It's really high, really high. So we had the Teams channel that I mentioned where people were like, tried this prompt, how did it go? What did you do? And all that kind of like general chatter and excitement. And we sort of said, we try and post in there as a project team like once a day. Just to try and keep that energy going. We did regular videos and how-to guides. So obviously you get your sort of videos and stuff off the Microsoft website, but if you do your own videos in-house, then you can make them a bit more specific to what things you might need to do within your organization rather than just being a sort of generic Microsoft one. Sorry.
It's true. It's true.
But it is true.
It's true. Because the Microsoft ones they're not going to relate to your business. No. Like we do not know how to run a legal firm. Even Microsoft legal department will be different than a legal company. These are not the same animal.
Absolutely. So we did weekly drop-ins as well. So you could drop in either face-to-face or virtually to just ask for a bit of support or chat about Copilot. And then constantly getting feedback. So we did that in the form either of like little surveys, just in forms, just to get an idea of sentiment. We also did interviews, and the business champions sometimes did those interviews, and they were really good because you got insights back that you might not have got from just a simple survey, and you got some interesting ideas, and it was just really insightful. And then also we made sure to get feedback from people who were recipients of Copilot generated content, because it's all very well to go, oh, do you know what, I smashed this out 10 times quicker but if the quality is not there, it kind of negates the benefit. We had book a refresher with a champion. Now this ties into the time thing. So quite often people started off with a Copilot license with all the best intentions, and then they were like, I just don't have the time. I'm on this project for like a month now, and I can't put the time aside for it. Then they'd come back, there'd be a little dip in their work, and they'd be like, right, I'll get on with this Copilot. But they didn't really have like fresh memory from the demos and the drop-ins and stuff. So they were able to book something in with a champion just to go back through it again. And then we also did a little internal podcast type series, Coffee and Copilot, where we had people come in and chat about Copilot or AI in general. It didn't have to be Copilot. So that was really good. That was really popular, actually. So
Coffee and
Copilot.
Yeah, I feel like that should be an actual thing.
Coffee and Copilot should be a thing. It should be part of like the framework, the playbook, whatever it is.
I think you just invented something.
I like how we're inventing things on the show.
This makes me like 3 this time.
Yeah, I know. So this is kind of like my last slide, and I know I mentioned that we didn't have success criteria, but for me, it was a huge success, and I think it was such a success because of the impact on the individuals. I've put some quotes up there. It changed my life. I no longer feel like I'm at a disadvantage. I don't have to work into the evening anymore, and it's made work exciting again. There's actual quotes that people gave me during feedback sessions, which is just huge. It's so inspirational. And we found, especially with our neurodivergent community, that it was really a game changer for them. We had people who struggled with auditory processing. So then being able to have those summaries and action notes off the back of meetings, or severely dyslexic. So being able to summarize the content rather than having to read huge documents. And even people who, English wasn't their first language. So we had an office in Poland, and they found that using the the sort of draft options in email and things made it so much easier to communicate with their counterparts in the UK. And that for me is the success. It's, it's the human element, and I genuinely found it joyful receiving this kind of feedback and seeing how much it had helped people.
That's wonderful. That is absolutely wonderful. I think I really identify with the neurodivergent part because I think personally it's helped a lot on what I do, and I know for Vicki it has for you as well. Like I don't remember what life was like without using Copilot, but obviously taking the time to learn it and get to know the tool, the kind of playback and the feedback has been unbelievable. And it's quite cool. Like I love the fact that people have said this, because that actually shows the high impact that it's had. I mean, the one working into the evening, I mean, if you've got a family and you're spending all your time on your laptop, and now all of a sudden you have this tool that helps you kind of be not necessarily more productive, but do things in a better way. Like, I think it's absolutely brilliant. That's wonderful feedback.
I love that feedback. And honestly, I resonate with some of this. Like, I don't remember having a meeting without Teams recap.
Nope.
We had an in-person meeting the other day, so you all will appreciate this. We had an in-person meeting in a room, no Teams meeting. And it was the first time we've had a meeting without a Teams. And we didn't know what to do with ourselves, because we talked and we're like, did someone write this down?
Did someone have to take notes?
Yeah, and we forgot. We all forgot to do this, and we were sitting there like, we need a Copilot for this. We need a Copilot for this. So we've started to just have a Teams meeting going in the background.
That's what we do.
In-person meetings to get a recap. Because we don't know what to do anymore. Like, here's a feature, but it was fascinating because it just happened, and we were planning a big conference, and we were thinking like, a big portion was it on the whiteboard and this and that. We're like, how do you exist without a recap in this world? I don't know.
I know.
Right? It's already happening. Like, how do you live without spell check? I do not know. How do you live without Teams recap? Also, I do not know.
Yeah, these two things I
Do
think
you remember we used to handwrite things?
No.
I don't like.
Absolutely not. Nope. I can't even read my own handwriting, let alone,
No, that is a job
notes.
for AI, reading handwriting.
Yeah.
Vicki, this has been so fascinating just hearing this journey, because this part, I think, I avoid the human part because it's hard. This part is hard. It's hard.
It is.
Because there's so many variables. Like code, you write it, if it runs once, it's going to run by itself until there's some security issues, right? But in general, this human thing is like so complicated because it may work amazing for this group of people, and this group are like, no, not at all. So I think it's very, very interesting how you had such high percentages of adoption in an organization, like in a business, and you were able to get this kind of, just this kind of response. I think that's really magical.
Yeah.
It is. It's incredible. And I think, Vicki, I've seen you working firsthand, and I've seen what you do. And again, folks, just so that you know, Vicki is not just in like change management and that type of thing. She is deeply technical, right? And I think what's special is you've been able to take your technical skills that you've learned through like M365 and Purview and that, and you've been able to weld them to your ability to do change management and adoption. And I think that is a very special skill. And if I could tell people that are in change management, get more technical, and people that are technical, start learning a bit more around like the culture of the way organizations work, and truly listen to them, because we have a perception on like, hey, this is how we should do things. But actually, I think what's special about you is you truly listen to the organizations you work with, and you're able to adopt and adapt your plan to the things they really need, not what you think they need.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you started with listening to what they're trying to do. I think this is great.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
You two, this has been a fascinating conversation. I did not think I would get so enthusiastic about this conversation, but this has been extremely fascinating. So thank you, Vicki, so much for joining us. Thank you for coming and crashing us in the studio.
That's cool. Thank you for having me. I haven't broken anything. So we're good.
It's been a whole 20 minutes.
For, listening to me go on.
All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you,
you all for joining us for another episode of Copilot Learning Hub.